Hey, ELD from Brainstorm MTG here with some weekly legacy. And here we are with the die roll. We are actually seeing who rolls the most ones. This is not a high roll. And there we go, going back to me. And 4 ones. So right out of the gate, clear advantage there. I'll be on the draw. I am on Manaless Dredge this week, the only deck in the format that really wants to do that. There you see a sneak peek of a little project I am working on that actually holds a playmat and a fully double-sleeved legacy deck. I'll be sharing those more officially in the coming weeks. And here we go on the draw versus Death and Taxes. So one of the actually more challenging matchups. There's a lot of cards, even in the main deck, that interact very well against Manaless Dredge. There's not a lot of decks in the format that can say that. Of course, Deathrite Shaman does do a lot of work, and that card is in a lot of decks. But Thalia is very unique in that it completely blanks all of the combo potential of this deck. Turns it into a grindy matchup where you're looking to generate card advantage by using Ichorids to create bridge from below tokens, or prized amalgams, narcomoebas, etc., just dying in combat because you are unable to sack them to Cabal Therapy or Dread Return. And that's actually almost as big a deal as those spells not resolving. At least with something like Chalice, you can still sacrifice to Cabal Therapy, even though you're not stripping their hand, but you can generate tokens. Whereas in this case, really, creatures dying the old-fashioned way is the only way that you can actually start generating those tokens, which isn't always easily done. And sometimes the way they're going to die is going to be trading in combat, meaning you only get that one set of bridge triggers. So Dylan taking a look at his 7, and he is going to be on the play. And let's take a look at the 7. I mean, you're pretty much going to keep any 7. You really need to be discarding. I mean, this is an option. I mean, let me know if you guys would keep this hand. I mean, this is 3 Narcomoebas and no Dredger. This is about as bad a hand as you could possibly have. About the only thing worse would be like all 4 Narcomoebas and no Phantasmagorian. So that is pretty terrible. We'll see what happens here. Dylan on Death and Taxes. Played against him last week as well. I don't recall if it was in the finals last week. It may have been, actually. Alright, so here we go. It was in my final round last week. Yes, though it was not the actual finals. I did take a loss. So this is me being the only undefeated player in this tournament at this point. And it looks like Dylan opens with Karakas, turn 2, Horizon Canopy, taking a point of damage, and into Thalia. So no spells for me. Gitaxian Probe is going to be a brick, no Cabal Therapies or Dread Returns. This is going to have to be dredging and just eventually grinding stuff out with an Ichorid. Discarding Nether Shadow. So still no Dredger. Terrible, terrible start to this game. If I had mulliganed, presumably I would be dredging on this next turn. Very interested to hear people's thoughts on that keep. It certainly doesn't look like a strong decision here. It might be safe to just assume versus Death and Taxes that Thalia is going to be coming down. It is played as a 4 of, and it is one of the strongest plays that he can have there. So Stoneforge Mystic, this is getting out of hand very fast. No dredging happening on my side. He's going to be able to get whichever equipment he wants. Batterskull is one of the best cards versus this deck, as you can get rid of the bridge tokens whenever you want by paying 3 mana to return Batterskull to your hand. Of course, that Germ is a 0/0 on its own, so it's going to die as state-based effects and take all of those bridges with it. So that is a really difficult card to beat, aside from the fact that it gives a creature vigilance and +4/+4 and lifelink, making that grindy plan B almost impossible. So looks like Sword of Fire and Ice is what he grabbed there. That may mean he has Batterskull in hand already, or it may mean that he just thinks card advantage is going to be relevant here to try and draw into more threats. And we've got Phantasmagorian. Cycling Street Wraith. Gets Stinkweed Imp. Games 2 and 3 can be a nightmare versus Death and Taxes. Access to cards like Containment Priest and Rest in Peace. Very problematic. Cards that truly blank any type of recursion from the graveyard whatsoever. Alright, so we've got just a handful of cards, left just 3, far from a full hand, and this game is looking very, very grim. Rashad and Port. Again, no lands, but it's colorless, and there is Mirran Crusader. Pro-black, that is almost the entire deck. Even the prized amalgams have that black mana symbol. The only creature in the deck that can even block that is the Narcomoeba or something that you've dread returned, and that is not going to be happening this game due to Thalia. So really, it's a Narcomoeba or bust to block that guy. With 3 in the opening hand, this game is basically over. And there's Prized Amalgam. You know, this is going to need to be some type of race, and that is going to be really hard to do versus Mirran Crusader, who has pro-black. And even if he didn't, First Strike would be good enough versus almost the entire deck. So we've got 2 Ichorids coming in. That's an easy block on one of them. Just chipping away a little bit of damage. No Bridge from Belows yet. We're going to need some type of miracle with just a whole bunch of Bridge from Belows to just start generating a lot of zombie tokens. And that Mirran Crusader, even with Sword of Fire and Ice, if he has a land, does Dylan have a land? Doesn't look like he does. I feel like that would be coming right down. So that's good news. The Crusader holding the sword would be absolutely lethal in short order. It would push me to 1. And another Mirran Crusader. Dylan is taking a defensive posture, though. Not going to swing. So there we go. We got Nether Shadow. We got Ichorids coming in. And Prized Amalgam. So hoping to dredge and hit some Bridge from Belows. I mean, those Ichorids dying with a few Bridge from Belows in the graveyard could be huge. Let's see if we can hit Bridge from Below. There's Dread Return, Stinkweed Imp, Golgari Grave-Troll, Cabal Therapy, Gitaxian Probe, and another Nether Shadow. So no bridges. That is unfortunate. Those Ichorids came back just to look around. Sending is just going to crash them right into the Mirran Crusaders. So that is unfortunate. A full-on attack would lead to a one-sided Wrath of God. So those guys are just going away. They ate those black creatures for no reason. And that is a resource that I need to be very careful with here. That is going to run out. You cannot just keep returning Ichorids indefinitely. You do have to consume that resource, and it is scarce in this deck. There's a lot of black creatures, but it is far from sustainable. Alright, so Dylan, let's see here, could push through, just with the Mirran Crusaders, he could push through 8, but it looks like he's still taking a defensive posture. He may want to just be activating Stoneforge to put in some equipment during the end step. And there's a Mother of Runes, adding to the defensive posture. So Dylan passing. Got Nether Shadow coming in. And we've got Ichorids. And Golgari Grave-Troll is dredging. Again, hoping to hit, 2 or 3 Bridge from Belows would be amazing. There's a bridge. That's something. All right. So going to be able to start to generate some type of card advantage here. And sending with the team. 8, 10, 12. So currently not facing lethal on a crackback. However, any equipment that comes in would in fact turn lethal. So let's see here. This is perhaps not a good attack. But it looks like Dylan's going to be blocking, so it's going to generate some zombie tokens. All right. We've got 2 and a Swords to Plowshares here. So declining to put in equipment, and instead Swords to Plowshares, giving me some life, which is not inconsequential. I'm going to have 4 creatures dying, and that's going to generate 4 tokens. So an interesting attack step. Far from dead. Now that Swords to Plowshares is actually pushed outside of lethal range. Dylan taking a very defensive posture, trying to make sure he does not get blown out. Whereas Thalia may just be good enough to make sure that doesn't happen. I can't Dread Return, so really it's just the damage that's on board, and the only creatures that you have to worry about are the ones that are already in the graveyard. And we've got 2 mana for another Stoneforge. And grabbing Umezawa's Jitters. Jit. And we've got Nether Shadow coming back. Ichorids. And still dredging. All right, Grave-Troll going 6 deep here. Cabal Therapy really wants some more Bridge from Below's. Flayer, the Hatebound, not going to be part of the equation this game. Unless somehow Thalia dies. Very, very difficult to make that happen. Mother of Runes. Alright, so here we go. Another all-out swing. This one would be lethal if not blocked. So we're going to definitely see some blocking here. We've got 2 mana. And it looks like putting in the Nightmare Batterskull. So this is a huge problem. Got that Tyranitar Pokemon token for the Germ. Very unique. Alright, let's see here. So there's a single bridge. And it is likely a Stoneforge could die in this combat step just to get rid of the bridge. Now that Batterskull is a massive problem. When Dylan gets to 5 mana, he will actually be able to pick up and put down that Batterskull each turn, essentially making sure that I never have bridges for the rest of the game. That means, that virtually locks it out at that point. But let's see how the attack step goes and see how low the life totals can get. Dylan starting at 10. That Batterskull gonna be swinging back quite a bit. So Mother of Runes is going to be able to block. and protect herself. So disastrous attack step here. So it looks like just 2 damage getting through, but gaining 4 off of Batterskull. Losing the bridge from below. I mean, this is a disaster attack step. Just shuffling chairs around on the Titanic with these bridge tokens. And that is likely it. Mirran Crusaders, Batterskulls, Mother of Runes. This is a recipe for disaster. The very least, gaining life off of that Batterskull is just a huge problem. Once a Mirran Crusader picks that up, that is so much life gain. 12 life is just a massive swing when you are trying to get there using zombie tokens. And we have 3 mana for a Flicker Wisp to vindicate a zombie token. All right. And just coming in for 4. So again, a very conservative line here. Dylan seemingly on the cusp of lethal damage the whole time. And just trying to play conservatively here. Now he does not have the 3 mana to pick up the Batterskull, so hitting some bridge from belows could be excellent here. Get right back in the game with those Ichorid triggers. And figuring out what to use for the Ichorids at this point. Let's see, we've got 2 Ichorids. And it looks like that Golgari Thug may get removed. That may be the only Dredger. That may not be worthwhile. Thinking this through, looks like the Ichorid is going to bring in the other Ichorid and then draw step, dredge Golgari Golgari Thug. And there we have, late to the party, there's that Narcomoeba with 2 Prized Amalgams. That is about as good a 4-card dredge as you could conceivably hope for. That is going to be a non-black creature, so I could actually block a Mirran Crusader with him, unless Mother of Runes starts to meddle in the equation. And the 2 Prized Amalgams put some pressure too, so very interesting. The only thing you'd like to see there is bridge from below. That would have really pushed it over the edge. But still, maybe too little versus this dominant board state from Dylan. I mean, this is really, really grim. You got the 2 Mirran Crusaders and the Batterskull. We know about the equipment in hand. Flicker Wisp in the air, and just dwindling life totals here, down to 12. Ichorid's attacking are just going to crash into those Mirran Crusaders. An all-out attack probably doesn't even gain anything at this point. Yeah, that's just going to the end step and getting back the 2 Prized Amalgams. Discarding Phantasmagorian. That should allow for a restock of fresh creatures for those Ichorids to feast on and join the fray one more time. And let's see here. And there's the 5th land, so if Dylan chooses to, he can pick up and put down Batterskull indefinitely here. That is a huge problem. And we'll see what he chooses to do here. Seemingly unwinnable for Dredge here. Oh, but he's going to walk away from the 5 mana to draw a card. Very interesting. Just sending for 4. So let's see what the strategy is here. I've got the Nether Shadows to be able to come back anyways. So sure, let's throw 4 in front of that. Now Mother of Runes could turn this into just slaughter, but instead there's going to be a trade. Tokens go off the battlefield, life is gained. Mother of Runes able to play defense still. But this attack step is no longer going to have a Batterskull in it. So no more free life gain along with the best blocker in the business. So discarding Phantasmagorian, getting those Nether Shadows right back. Getting Ichorids back. Let's see here. So there's up to 5 blockers. Still only 4 damage could possibly come in. But there's a bridge from below. Very welcome. And a Nether Shadow. And a Prized Amalgam. Alright. Sending the whole crew except that lonely Narcomoeba. Somebody's got to stay home. And let's see how this blocking works out. We've got 5 guys. If he blocks the 5 biggest, only 3 damage is going to come through. We'll be generating some zombies, though, if the creatures are actually blocked effectively. Mirran Crusader might be better off on Prized Amalgam. Tough to tell. I'm liking the way that this is shaping up for Manaless Dredge. A lot of tokens could be generated here. Alright, so it looks like no creatures are gonna die for death and taxes. Oh, no, and the Flicker Wisp is getting in on the act, so we will have dead creatures. Actually missed that Flicker Wisp in that earlier combat math. He was just chilling out off to the side. Alright, so some zombies get back in there. First strike damage resolves. Regular damage resolves. And the bridge is removed. 1 more token coming in. So a lot of tokens generated there. This has turned into quite a game from probably one of the worst hands possible to Dylan's very defensive posture. It does feel like at almost any time a Sword of Fire and Ice on a Mirran Crusader could have just mopped this game up. And it looks like we are back in exactly that situation. I mean, at 12 life, putting Sword of Fire and Ice on Crusader would do it. Instead, we've got a Batterskull getting picked up. And sending. So looking at lethal damage right there, 12. 12 damage. Not going to activate Mother of Runes, though, so that Narcomoeba was actually going to die for the cause here, keeping me alive. And of course, he doesn't stick around for the standard damage, so only first strike is going to gain life there. Just somehow hanging on in this game here. Prized Amalgam's triggering. Now that was the last Narcomoeba in the deck, so there will be no blocking Mirran Crusader next round. This is it. Looks like Grave-Troll one more time. Get that other bridge from below. But there are no more Narcomoebas. 3 started in the hand. The one that was in the deck certainly played his role quite admirably. But there is literally nothing that can be done against that pro-black Mirran Crusader. Every creature on board is in fact black. And we ended up having quite a game 1 there. Unexpected, given the start. And it looks like plenty of damage, but not when there is a Mirran Crusader holding a Batterskull in the way. Dylan at more than his starting life total. I decline to attack, instead just adding to the team, getting those prized amalgams in those zombie tokens, but this is just going to be one swing away, and then moving on to game 2 and maybe 3. And let's see, should just be a swing from the Crusader. Fastest way to do 12 damage from this situation. Very few cards left in the library. I did make a little bit of a show out of that. Those are the type of things that I like to do as a player, is like when you're definitely going to lose, try and create some type of distraction, some type of diversion. Drawing attention to the fact that I'm almost out of cards can lead people to just hone in on that as the new win condition. It's kind of the danger of cool things. People see a new way to win a game that they've, probably never won, by decking their opponent when you're playing Death and Taxes. And, you have like a 5% chance that they might overlook lethal on board, thinking that all I need to do is hold on to the fort until he draws those last 2 cards. So that is a low percentage play in a situation where you had essentially no percentage if your opponent played perfectly, and those are some of the most fun games to win. So I'll throw that out there given the chance. All right, so sideboarding here. Death and Taxes, no shortage of options. I see Rest in Peace, Containment Priests. I mean, it's a nightmare. Losing game 1, no bueno. Not where you want to be. You want to win all the game 1s when you're on Manaless Dredge. You don't want your opponent to be able to interact with you, and you want to try and play games 2 and 3 and try and find a way to win one of those. But kind of going into it as a given, winning game 1. So that is a big-time loss, possibly stemming from that opening keep, possibly just from the fact that Thalia is so strong in the matchup. Tough to say, but did get through almost the entire deck there. And Mirran Crusader, a very dangerous card versus this deck indeed. Pro-Black really makes it almost impossible to block, as we said, unless it is with a Narcomoeba, or if you somehow have Dread returned either Golgari Grave-Troll or Flayer the Hatebound. Game 2 and 3, I'm going to look to be less dependent on the combo. There's so many cards out of Dylan's deck that just completely stop the combo from happening. Not only do you have cards that remove the ability after the fact, cards like Rest in Peace, but then you have cards that stop it from even happening in the first place, like Thalia. So there's kind of multiple layers of disruption here. There's cards that completely blank the deck and make it impossible for you to win, and for those you're going to have Force of Will. And then there's cards that make it more difficult, and that's going to be Thalia, where you can't cast your spells anymore, but you can still dredge. So we'll see a lot of disruption from Dylan, almost certainly, coming in. And on my end, Dread Return becomes very suspect. Any targets that are exclusively for Dread Return, cards like Balustrade Spy, definitely going to trim back, if not eliminate, all of those. And it's not terrible to have some number of Dread Returns left in the deck, just so you can Dread Return a Golgari Grave-Troll or some other large, some other creature. In general, though, cards that are only good when you're Dread Returning, not as attractive. But it's not terrible to just fire off a Dread Return on turn 2 or 3 to hit like a 10-10 Grave-Troll in this type of matchup. It's still very difficult to deal with. Swords to Plowshares being one of the only ways, or of course Mirran Crusader or Mother of Runes giving pro-green. But barring that, it can sneak a game from someone's grasp very quickly. While the shuffling's happening here, I would like to thank Scholars in Brockton, Massachusetts. That is where this match was filmed every Wednesday, 7:30. We do live on Twitch, as well as the archive here on YouTube. So you can actually see these matches play out live if you like without commentary, or just wait a bit and it'll be on YouTube on Brainstorm MTG with commentary. This is something that we just started doing. If this is something you enjoy, definitely would like to hear about it and would love to hear any type of feedback you have. One of the comments from last week involved muting the match in the background. Had some people say that it was a little difficult to kind of tell what was going on when there was multiple audio tracks, so I went and silenced that. If that's what you guys like, let me know in the comments. If you want maybe a little bit of volume coming in from the match, that's something we can do as well. Currently doing this in OBS, and that is the most streamlined way of doing it, but also do have iMovie as well, so if this starts to become more and more popular, I could look at doing a bit more editing. Right now, it's very raw footage, so when we have shuffling and the like, it's a little bit of time for other comments and thank yous, but this time could also be edited out. Does take a bit more time on my end, but if that's something you guys really would love to see, we can definitely take a look at making that happen. Currently up over 200 subscribers on YouTube, and looking through the YouTube policies, it looks like a lot of doors open up at 1,000 viewers. So I am interested in getting there. So anything you can do to help that is greatly appreciated. Letting your other legacy and vintage playing friends know about the channel, sharing on your Facebook, sharing on YouTube, social media, always welcome. Really appreciate any type of help with growing this channel. And we will be off with game 2 and possibly 3 here very shortly. 17 minutes left in the round. Really long game with Dylan. Not nearly as long as last week's game 1. If you did catch that the prior week, I got paired up against Dylan in a Death and Taxes mirror match, and the first game literally took almost the entire clock. It was a tremendous game, back and forth swings. And here we go, a Golgari Grave-Troll, a very welcome card in the opener, the best dredger in the deck, dredging 6 cards compared to Stinkweed Imp's 5 or Golgari Thug's 4. No shambling shells in this deck. It is all in on those dredge creatures. Dylan asking for the exact Oracle text on Dread Return, and I show him one out of my sideboard. And we'll see if Dylan is on the play or if I am on the play. That is a very, very easy mistake to make. If you do not declare that you are on the draw and you take a look at your opening hand, you are on the play. So you've got to make sure when you're playing against Manaless Dredge that you do declare that. Yes, everybody knows that it's the right decision to be on the draw, but you actually have to declare that. Alright, so going to 6 cards here. Looks like we saw a Flicker Wisp in there. It's an interesting decision for a deck like Death and Taxes to either mulligan until you hit your graveyard hate, or if you just kind of keep a reasonable hand and hope that Thalia is able to shut off enough of the shenanigans. And here we go. Oh, it looks like he actually did choose to be on the draw. So Plains go, and then draw a Force of Will, which is a very welcome addition to the hand there. Once that Dredger is in the graveyard, you are free to start firing off Force, and could not have a better target. Rest in Peace completely beats this deck all by itself, so Prized Amalgam, a totally fine sacrifice to Force of Will there. So that was a ideal draw off the top. Absolutely huge. So without that, that game would have been over on the spot. As a Dredge player, you have to be pretty happy when that happens. There is a strong chance that that was a big reason why that hand was kept. So you have to wonder what else is in that hand when they have a turn 2 Rest in Peace. I mean, you could actually keep Rest in Peace with 3 Pokemon cards, and you're going to win every single time that I don't have Force of Will there. And there is Thalia. So that is a huge problem. That's going to protect all of his future cards like Rest in Peace or Containment Priest. That Contagion in my hand is no longer to do any work. Whereas if he had let out with a Containment Priest there, that would have been totally fine. Even though it is a card that beats the deck all by itself, it would not have been enough versus Contagion. But now all of his cards are going to be totally uncounterable. Nothing I can do to interact with them. And there we go, returning a whole team, dredging. We got multiple Bridge from Belows here. So this is looking pretty reasonable. And if you can just get a dominant position on board, you can be in excellent shape. And here we go, more Bridge from Below being discarded, and the whole team turns sideways. So Thalia can actually defend against Ichorid. Well, only 2 is going to be able to come in this time. But that's going to generate a bunch of bridge tokens. So 2 bridges are really going to make this tough. Every single turn, that Ichorid's going to be able to come in and generate 2 bears. I mean, that is, basically better at making bears than Death and Taxes itself. And it looks like Dylan's actually stuck on just 1 white mana. So some of his most powerful effects are not going to be able to come in. Cards like Mirran Crusader. There's the Umezawa's Jite at 3 mana because of Thalia. So not going to be able to equip it this turn. And there comes Ichorid, removing Golgari Thug. That Golgari Grave-Troll still available. So the full suite of dredging here. Prized Amalgam and Narcomoeba. So that's going to actually trigger the Narcomoeba is going to trigger that Prized Amalgam. And this is getting out of hand very quickly. Not really comboing off, just generating little incremental value, and it is a incoming avalanche of the undead. It's a real decision here whether or not to block the Ichorid or the zombie token. The Ichorid's going to die anyways. And he does, in fact, block the Ichorid, getting 2 more creatures. Prized Amalgam comes in, and this game state is completely out of hand. Looks like we have 14 damage plus the Ichorid coming in, and that is going to do it. No equipping on Thalia, so he's going to call it right there. Bridge from Below, way too much of a problem, generating card advantage, and that is really a solid plan versus Death and Taxes in all but their most broken hands. The ability to just generate bears for no mana, just non-stop every turn, just more and more adding to the board. That is basically what Death and Taxes would love to do, is just flood the board with a bunch of bears. And Manaless Dredge can outdo it at that game with the right set of cards. So we've got a little over 10 minutes left in this match. Manaless Dredge, of course, can have really explosive turns. So though even going to time, you kind of have that ability to potentially just blow your opponent out with the right combination. Of course, Dylan's going to do everything he can do to make that not happen, and he has a lot of cards that answer that call, from Thalia, Containment Priest, Rest in Peace, Swords to Plowshares does actually stop removal. It's a 1-for-1 trade, but it does actually stop recursion, I should say. So that can be extremely good versus cards like Ichorid or Prized Amalgam. You know, a card like Ichorid can really just serve as an engine every single turn with those Bridge from Belows. Just keeps coming back and just generating tokens. So having a Swords for that is huge. Death and Taxes does have all of the tools. It's just a question of does it draw it when it needs it. And here we go. Both players going from 20 life. And there's a Dredger there. No permission. So this is a risky hand in the sense that there's no force of will for any type of Rest in Peace or Containment Priest. But going to 6 is just awful. And really, force of willing on the first turn is awful. Like, you really, really need to get a card into the graveyard and start dredging with this deck. You cannot just sleep on your opponent. You have to just get that dredge mechanism going and then hope to start generating an incremental advantage on board and put that type of pressure, especially if you've boarded out a lot of the combo elements of the decks. This commentary is a new feature for the channel, so if this is something you guys like, let me know in the comments. Let me know how it can improve. This is something that I'm going to be able to spend a little bit of time on improving every week, and I'd like to make sure that I use my time as effectively as possible to deliver what the Legacy community is most interested in. And of course, that's actually Legacy, Vintage, any format that has Brainstorm in it. I am game. And Dylan mulling here. Dylan looking for some very specific cards, things that are going to interact with this deck in the early turns. Do not want it to just get out of hand too quickly. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just 5 cards here. Looking very, very good for Manaless Dredge. This is one of those situations where keeping the 7 cards that follow your plan instead of trying to find a way to stop their plan ends up being for the best. All right, so here we go with a turn 1 Vial. Not the most exciting start versus Manaless Dredge. Much better versus the blue decks, and discarding a Phantasmagorian. Phantasmagorian definitely better versus cards like Faerie Macabre and Surgical Extraction, allowing you to discard multiple Dredgers and set up a more explosive early game. And it looks like we're going to do that old double activation on Phantasmagorian, setting up some recursion. So upkeep, returning Ichorid, removing Golgari Thug, trigger Prized Amalgam, and the draw step hits the Golgari Grave-Troll. So here we go, getting some pressure early. There's another Prized Amalgam, and 2 bridges. That is an excellent start here. So Rest in Peace is really going to be necessary. Even if he gets Rest in Peace, I'll still have that Prized Amalgam on board, as well as those zombie tokens. So this is really an interesting game state. Even his best card in Rest in Peace. Oh, and there we have a Swords to Plowshares. Very interesting. So Prized Amalgam being the target of that Swords. Now, if Ichorid had been targeted during the attack step, that would have saved 3 life, and it would have prevented those zombie tokens from entering the battlefield when it died. Here we're seeing Ichorid doing some serious work as an engine of zombie creation. So 2 mana available with a Vial on 2. Facing down another 9-point swing. If Ichorid comes in, that'll go to 12. So untap, upkeep. Moving Golgari Thug. Dredgers for days. So yeah, this is a 12 damage swing here. Coming in. Vialing in a Thalia. And Thalia is going to block Ichorid, which will prevent the 3 damage here, but in the long run, I believe we'll end up creating more damage, depending on how long the long run is. We've got a lot of zombie tokens here. This is way out of hand. Dylan going to 3. Even Mirren Crusader going to do very little in this scenario. There are 6 zombie tokens that need to be mopped up. A card like Cataclysm would really be necessary to be able to kill all of those zombie tokens. You know, Powder Keg, Engineered Explosives, those cards not really played very much out of Death and Taxes. This is a real mess. Dylan, not a lot of options. So many zombie tokens. He is mulling over his options, but this is likely over. At only 8 life, Thalia on board as a lone blocker. 1 mana Mother of Runes. She is going to be sick, even with Mirren Crusader. Blocking the 3 biggest creatures, this is still lethal, and Thalia is going to ensure that even a Swords to Plowshares wouldn't be able to fire off here. So that's going to do it right here. Ichorid coming back one last time. Removing Stinkweed Imp. Final Dredge. And that should be lethal. Get those 3 creatures out of there. That is still an extra 10 unblocked. So that is the match. Dylan just quickly checking the combat math and seeing that is 10 unblocked. So that is our finals. Congratulations to everyone who placed in this tournament. It's actually a very generous prize payout if you ever come down to Scholars. Anyone finishing X and 1 or better gets some store credit, and that goes towards anything in the store. Of course, Kyle has an excellent selection of legacy and vintage cards. So yeah, if these videos are reaching you and you're in the New England area, hope you can make it down, especially for some of our larger events. And this has been ELD with Brainstorm MTG. Thanks for watching.